Okay, so we've got some of the airbrushing done. Well, I say we. Marc's done some of the airbrushing. And now we're going to show off a quick technique that I actually use quite a lot, but Marc's going to do it.
This is something which I've not really done previously.
Yeah.
I'm a bit of a painting snob sometimes, and I tend to avoid the dry brush.
The dry brush, or in this case, a large powder brush, which is actually an excellent tool for dry brushing. So hit up your nearest place and buy some makeup gear, because it's real good, and it's a lot cheaper than all those hobby brand stuff. So what we're going to do, I'm going to pass you these models, which you've already very kindly primered.
I have. I've primed, zenithal them using a black initially, and then used a grey second primer to get them to this kind of stage we're at right now.
Yeah, so you would normally go to a white primer.
Yeah.
By going to a grey primer, it gives you somewhere to go. And now what you can do is with a dry brush, and we're using a Game Master Dungeon Effects paint, which is a relatively thick paint.
Yeah,
so
we went for a thick paint so that you don't have to leave the paint to dry before you get
dry
on with
brushes
it.
quite well. So you're going to dry brush the edges.
I am indeed.
So what this is, it's a controlled dry brush. So you are essentially dry brushing again from the top down.
Yep.
So you don't want to be picking up all the bits underneath.
Yep.
You want to really be
Let's try this one here.
accentuating the parts that would get the light hitting them.
Yep.
The reason for doing this is because once we've done it, we're going to then apply contrast paints over it. I keep saying we, you, me, who knows? We're gonna make this a communal effort.
Someone is going to do this.
Yeah.
And let's see how this goes because.
So you've
there we go.
you're getting most of the paint off the brush.
You can see that's still got some.
Yeah, it's loaded with quite a lot. So we're wiping that off.
Even myself, not dry brushing it. I know that's too much.
Yes. I mean, you want to get it so that you almost can't see it going on, but it will subtly build up.
That's about right there.
Yeah. So your focus really wants to be on the top. So this one's an interesting one because it's actually got the guy in there as well. You definitely want to hit him with some of it.
Yep.
Get all these top areas and just picking out the edges. And what this will do is mean that it almost pre-edge highlights it for you.
You can see that wonderful there on the machine gun.
Yeah, for sure.
Not that it really matters on the machine gun because the machine gun's going to be painted black or silver anyway.
Yeah, I mean,
we have lost the hatch already.
I was just about to say, this is probably too big a brush, really, for this kind of job. It's a bit heavy. So what you want to do here is really focus in on like the fronts of the legs and the fronts of the toes, because they're the bits that would naturally pick up the light. And it's just developing those edge-catching highlights.
So you can see it really effectively on these fingers.
And what that means is once you put a contrast paint over the top of it, it will smooth down that dustiness you get from dry brushing, and it will start to look like you've put way more effort in than you actually have.
Big fans of making it appear as if you put far more effort in than you actually have.
I've used this on 15mm figures, and it still works. Like, as long as there's a little bit of detail on those figures, and you use a smaller brush, obviously.
I don't see a problem with this enormous brush.
I mean, whatever you fancy.
I think we all like a big brush here.
How's it going? I mean, you've probably caught a little bit too much on here, to be honest, but it doesn't matter because we'll sort that out.
To be fair, I'd like it like that if it was me.
Yeah?
I think that works because it's a curved surface
It's
anyway.
not bad,
which,
yeah. Careful, you're going up rather than down. You don't want to go up rather than down. That's not how light works.
Ooh, you get reflections and refractions of light.
We're not that fancy. We're dry brushing. Okay, so is that pretty much done?
I think that's about there.
Yeah, can I pass it over for me to have a peep at? Yeah, that looks good. Cool. Okay. All right, so Marc's taken on the airbrushing task because that's his job.
It is my job, and I have much prettier hands than James.
Well, yeah, I am a nail biter since birth, so there you go. But yeah, you're using some contrast paint through the airbrush here.
Yeah, so the paint I used through the airbrush, which I thinned just slightly with water, is Contrast Flesh Tearers Red. So as you can see here, just feathering on the underside of the bits, just to create some pre-shadows, I suppose, because we're going to apply another layer on top.
So this is where the magic happens almost, because by putting that red underneath, you've toned it a little bit, and that when the blue goes over will create interesting things.
Well, as you can see here, we are masking out the little chap on top because we don't want to make him red, nor do we want to make him green or turquoise kind of green. We want to keep him and paint him in a normal camo.
Yeah, so you'll do that with a brush once we've finished everything else.
We'll do, yeah.
So Marc, professional hand model, showing off his hand aplenty. You can also stab in that with a cocktail stick to get it a much more refined mask. And then we're using, it's Athematic Blue, I think this one is.
It's a wonderful colour, great name.
Yeah.
Whoever thinks of the names for Games Workshop, they deserve an award for just making them awkward to say on video.
Yep. So you're thinning this again a little bit.
Just with water.
Yeah. Don't need to use the contrast medium to thin contrast paints. One of the many myths of contrast paints.
One of the many myths, yeah.
And one of the things that isn't really advertised about contrast paints is they're great through the airbrush. You can see how well it glazes here, right?
It just flows really well through an airbrush, and yeah, one of the natures of the paint is that the pigment's quite fine. So yeah, it flows through really, really effectively. And what I'm doing here is I'm effectively covering the entire miniature, even where I painted with the Flesh Tearers red. And as we mentioned before, when those two colours combine, they create really intriguing kind of shadows. And I applied multiple shades on here. I used a hairdryer to swiftly get it dry in between layers as well to speed up the process.
Yeah.
And just kept applying it on there a little bit at a time. As you can see, I'm feathering away there.
Yeah, and you're using your airbrush about 20 psi for all of that, right? Yeah. Which is about as high as you want to go. And here to finish things up, you can see it's got its blue tone on now, and you're now starting to apply grime.
Yeah, grime. So I used a bit of weathering effect from Vallejo. It's wet mud, I believe.
Splash mud.
Splash mud. Close enough. So I just loaded up my bristle brush, and just blasted air through the brush. And then I also added a bit of blood effect on there as well, as you can see on the fists.
Yeah, and then just finishing off with the detail, right? With the pilot and the metal on the...
Yeah, sponged a little bit of steel on there to make it look like weathered and bit beaten during a conflict.
Okay, so finished model, looking good, super quick, super easy, and we'll be back to tell you more of these kind of tips next Monday.
Super quick, super easy. So if you enjoyed the video and you gained some knowledge or some insight into the process of painting your miniatures quickly, speedily, and hopefully effectively, and why don't you like, subscribe, and hit that alert button.
This video has been brought to you by WI Prime, Wargames Illustrated magazine's online members club. View more videos or find out more about WI Prime by following these links.